topic tonight is sustainable housing. The goal of this forum is to help facilitate sharing of ideas and experience through open QA for the benefit of entrepreneurs working to develop and launch their ideas in sustainable housing or related technologies. Tonight's format will be slightly different in that we will start off with a roundtable format and open the floor to questions. Feel free to raise them anytime. Now in this roundtable, we've gathered leaders from areas in the design of or technologies related to sustainable residential structures covering single-family, multifamily, and apartment buildings. They represent practices in engineering, architecture, lighting, energy, heating, water, materials, resiliency, finance, planning, policy, strategy. And I've also asked guests to join our audience who have a practice in this as well and can contribute certainly to the conversation. So to start off, the first question is, what is the problem? Is it environmental, resource, or economic? This first slide presents global atmospheric concentration of CO2 from 1960 forward, the brown line. It also shows the global surface temperature, the upper line, and the lower line, global ocean heat content. This next slide shows contribution of CO2. Built environment contributes 46.7%, transportation 33.4%, and industry 19.9% of CO2 emissions from the US by sector. I'd like to introduce our panel to talk about this, and I'm going to start on my left and go down and ask each one to introduce themselves, their organization, what they do in relation to sustainability and sustainable housing. And we'll start from there. Alexander?
Thank you, Fred. It's a nice introduction. Good evening. My name is Alexander de Hoge. I'm here with two hats. On the one hand, I have my own business, which is a design firm called ORG, which means Organization for Permanent Modernity. We have an office here in Boston and one in Brussels, in Europe. I also have another hat as an academic, and recently, since about 3 months, there's a new center at MIT called the Center for Advanced Urbanism, which is an initiative to bring together several faculty in architecture, real estate, hydrology, transportation planning, etc., you name it, be combined to look at urban development problems in a more holistic way. And I am the director of that initiative, or of that center. So that's a young new thing.
Hi, I'm Chips. Good evening. Nice to see everyone here. I work for Shrem Sylvania. Many of you know Sylvania as a lighting company. I've been there for 25 years. With a very 360-degree kind of career. I used to be a researcher many years ago and worked on LEDs and organic LEDs long time, and then drove them crazy till they agreed to start a business, and I was the guy who started the business for them in LED lighting and ran that for many years, and then in search of the next big thing, I focused on new innovations for the company, and now I'm in the process of changing hats, not wearing two hats, but changing hats, maybe wearing many hats. So after 25 years, I'm actually off on my new innovation of myself, starting January, and will probably be a consultant and advisor, work with startups for while I figure out the next project.
Hi everybody. I'm a civil engineer. I'm the founder and the president of the Built Environment Coalition. And what we focus on is improving the sustainability, which is the economic opportunity and social justice and environmental regeneration of the built environment systems. But we also look a lot at disaster resiliency, because there's ways in which those two parts really work together. When we think about the built environment, what we look at is really the full scale, so going from the buildings out to the critical infrastructure system. So water and wastewater, as well as energy, transportation, communications, and solid waste. And the idea is really, with the Built Environment Coalition, to think about the ways in which we can look at the interdependencies between those systems to identify the kinds of critical breakthroughs that Chips was just talking about.
I'm Ryan Dings, Vice President and Senior Counsel of Blue Homes. A little bit about myself first. I'm a lawyer by trade. Practiced primarily most of the last decade in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a Sunbelt boomtown. My background was in residential real estate development. I worked on developments from 5 homes to 1,500 homes. Large suburban master plan communities, infill projects, townhomes, condos, a wide range of projects. Took an opportunity to take a break from legal practice, went to the Harvard University Graduate School of Design, got a master's of design, and met up with some folks there who were working on this interesting project at a startup company called Blue Homes. Blue is an interesting case study. It came out of the academic environment. Started with a studio at the Rhode Island School of Design, then with some support from folks at Harvard and MIT, led to the formation of the company in 2008.
I'm a recovering architect, started my journey in residential design and construction of single-family homes, but didn't stay there for a very long time, and went through mainstream architecture for 12 years. In 1998, I started an organization called the Green Roundtable, whose mission was to put green building on the map in the market. In 98, it wasn't. People kept asking me, do you do this full time? So I have, since 98, I've been kind of a serial social entrepreneur, and I've started a bunch of things, all with different corporate structures and different models. So I can empathize with other entrepreneurs very, very to the heart.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Malloy, and I'm president of New England Renewable Energy Systems and Mercury Mechanical Services. We are, for the past 15 years, we've been focused on traditional heating and cooling systems, installing primarily in the commercial market. In the last 2 years, since I've joined the company, we've been broadening our interest and focus to include renewable energy systems. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion and hearing what other people think about where we're going and why we're facing the challenges we're facing.
Something that has been developed over many years, but it got realized very rapidly in the last, say, decade, is the idea of LEDs, which are essentially, believe it or not, taking an electron and converting it into a photon. How radical is that? It doesn't overheat like a hot filament, and so on. So the human reaction, of course, is, and also the market reaction because of the infrastructure already installed, is to shoehorn this totally flexible, new, tunable digital technology into the old envelope. So we have, as I'm sure all of you have seen, you go to the Home Depots and the Lowe's and you find LED bulbs, and you screw them into the old tin can again. And yes, you do get a lot of energy savings as a result of that.
This building, and if you look at this picture, there is a date, 9/20/2012. I took this picture during our final punch list. Last week, we got another utility bill for October and November. This year, you can see, in November, utility bill, electric bill, came out 4,880 kilowatt hour. If you compare with the older systems, it was 14,400, and where is the 4,800?
Housing is primarily 80% debt, 20% equity. So banks themselves are a very conservative industry. They do not want to change the appraisal process. They do not want to take any risks that differentiate from the rate of return that they have calculated to get on every residential mortgage in the United States. So I think if you want to innovate, you have to rely more on equity. You can't innovate and rely on traditional construction financing or traditional mortgage financing to take that innovative step.
If you can't get a large company like Saint-Gobain to get a platform out there so that builders can build homes to passive house quality and know what it is and be sure that the materials they're using together are going to give them a guarantee that it's going to have the air seals that they need, you can't get it done.
Buildings, especially homes, change significantly as families go through different phases, and houses need to change to accommodate those elements. And so we're not talking about like this office building, right? This office building is essentially not gonna change where the structural steel is gonna be, right? You know, taking Alexander's example, you'll knock out walls and, you know, the law firms will take more space or less space or whatever. But this building is not gonna change. Houses, I mean, if you look at the original Levittown buildings, those buildings have changed dramatically, and that's only been 50, 60 years.
We did work with AIG and Fireman's Fund, and this is actually going back maybe 3 or 4 years ago to help them formulate, they realized it was nothing new in their product line, but to formulate green building, if you're insuring and you want to be able, if an incident occurs, that you build to LEED standards or build to in the commercial markets. And they put those products out there a few years ago, which is different from the premiums and what they're charging, but it's definitely a shift.
If you look at if you want to achieve a market where the majority of buildings produced have a very low energy footprint, I think there's an argument for a certain sector of the market where there is no need for incentives in principle. If you think about property managers or owners that long term, I mean over generations own property, these people definitely, or these owners have a stake in investing into the low energy footprint of their properties. Sadly, that's just a very small segment of the market. So if you do the life cycle costing, the only way to kind of get back to the investment you have to do to get the low energy project is, well, by having it for multiple generations. People don't do that. So that could be an argument for a regulatory framework to be organized to actually deal with that cost and the benefits of that and kind of adjust the market for that purpose.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists, for joining us tonight on these conversations.